From the creators of the original cheat sheet rankings, this is the Fantasy Index Podcast. Brought to you by Fantasy Index, the original and best since 1987. Now your hosts, Luke Wilson and Colt Williams.
All right, welcome everyone once again to the latest installment of the Fantasy Index Podcast. With me as always, or as close to as always as we can have it, Colt Williams. I am Luke Wilson, and we are here to lay out what has taken place here in Week 7 and look forward down the road into Week 8 and try to give you something like a crystal ball read on who to go after on the waiver wire this week. What are the performances that are real? What are the ones that we're dismissing? What do you think, Cole? What do you think of the Monday night 2-pack that we just ground through with that scintillating Cardinals-Chargers finish?
Yeah, that one was odd in its own right. First of all, I don't like the doubleheaders. It's like, you mentioned it, I only have two eyeballs. I'm not going to watch them both like split like I'm a chameleon or something. However, yeah, I mean, it was very heartbreaking. We'll be talking about it in the news, of course, but watching the ending of the Bucs game, just the beginning of it, you see Mike Evans, huge touchdown, awesome. He caught it in such a weird fashion and then almost catches a second one, pulls his hamstring, ruled out almost immediately. And then later in the game, Chris Godwin goes down with what they're calling a dislocated ankle. It looked very serious. They didn't want to show the replay. They put him in an air cast. They carted him off. I will say, if there is any kind of optimism to it, I think it was Tyrone Tracy in the offseason or like really early, like week 1. They put him in an air cast and he was out there like the very, very next same week. So
true, but yeah, they wouldn't show the replay, but what we were able to make out from just seeing Godwin on the turf was his foot didn't really appear to be pointing in the correct direction. So if it's a dislocation, maybe that makes his return to action in 2025 less complicated because, like, just one that comes to mind, Tony Pollard had that hip drop tackle against the Niners in the 2022 playoffs, and he had a kind of a crummy 2023, and people were talking like, oh, was it because of the fractured ankle? Mm-hmm. Hopefully, whatever the injury is, it makes Godwin's return to the field more straightforward. But yeah, I wouldn't imagine we're going to be seeing him again in 2024. Unfortunately, because he's been one of the better receivers in fantasy football, certainly for the average draft price that you paid for him. And really, he'd been one of the few players, period, that hadn't gotten hurt. I don't even have much Godwin. You know that I got to be honest, like I was not really a believer in Godwin, and I was wrong. But still, it's to the point that it's not funny anymore. Like the sheer volume of injuries. Maybe I'm just getting too old for this crap. Like
for injuries.
Yeah. Like this is Lethal Weapon 28 here, but like I can't remember a year where it was this bad. Rashee Rice, Nico Collins, Aiyuk and Godwin in like rapid succession here. Several other names that I won't even delve into right now for brevity's sake, but. Yeah, basically, if you were riding the lightning with Godwin, bad news, folks. Bad news. It's time to prioritize one of the guys that we're going to be talking about on our batch of waiver wire players. Before we do that, though, Colt, can you take us to some of the business of the Week 8 that's at hand, matchups, injuries, all that stuff?
Yeah, so it's worth noting there's no teams on bye, so nice. And we don't have a doubleheader. You would think with an overload of games, it would be like, yeah, that's when we need to put 2 doubleheaders going on, but they didn't do that. No teams on bye. Sunday night football game, you got Cowboys versus the 49ers, so that's noteworthy if you have any players in that. And then Monday night football, Giants at the Steelers. If there's any injuries in those games, make sure that you have some audible options. Put your players in the flex position. Let's take a look. Wow, so many injuries. I mean, I really don't want to go through all of them. There's so many, but
they are grim.
You're talking about, you were saying like, let me give you the wide receivers through weeks 1 and 2. The wide receiver 1, Chris Godwin, out indefinitely. Nico Collins, wide receiver 2. Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver 9. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 12 in the first 2 weeks. Like they're coming for everybody. Like it's nonstop. It's
Malik
so
Neighbors has missed a bunch of time. It's just been
it's bad.
Now DK Metcalf,
So,
who has been a fringe wide receiver one.
yeah. So Brandon Aiyuk, torn ACL and MCL. He's out for the season. We will be talking about his replacements. It's very unfortunate. It's sad to see.
Yep.
You just mentioned DK Metcalf. He's week to week with a grade 1 sprain MCL. He's played through injuries before. He's only missed one game in his career.
Considering he was carded, we got to take it. We got to take this as a win. I mean, anytime a guy's carded and we're going to see him again relatively soon, that's a win, especially right now.
Yeah, for sure. One of the best quarterbacks in football, Jaden Daniels. I don't know if you saw the play. He got rolled up onto with a rib injury. I think it was a bit of game script where they're like, "Hey, it's the Panthers. We don't really need to have you out there." He was also coming out giving people the thumbs up that he's okay. He's week to week, so something to monitor.
It didn't look like it was that bad of a. When I watched the replay, I was like, "That really? That hit knocked him out of the game." So yeah, it may have been them being an abundance of caution with a helpless opponent.
David Montgomery, he left the game. He was helped off with the trainers. They had him on each side, kind of the human crutches, and then he returned in that same game. He says he's going to miss 0 time. He feels fine. That's something to monitor. It did look pretty serious at the time. But again, he returned in the game. So got to take him a little bit at his word. Deshaun Watson is Achilles. He is out for the season. His backup, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, negative on his x-rays for his finger. It's worth noting that Jameis Winston was out for this game. He was the emergency quarterback with the NFL's new rule, and he ended up having to go in because of these 2 injuries in front of him.
Yeah. We'll come back to that. I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, you can, for sure. CMC is still ramping up. They said Kyle Shanahan said it would be a long shot if he were to play on Sunday Night Football, so that's kind of one of the things I was hinting at. Derek Carr is oblique. He's going to start throwing tomorrow. Spencer Rattler will be the starter if he is not, if Carr is not out there to suit up. Chris Olave is still in concussion protocol. Demario Douglas, now this is a guy who was last week's waiver wire darling. He came out with an illness, ended up not playing the entire game. It wasn't due to injury. It was illness, so that's at least a silver lining. Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp, they're expected to be back at practice this week. Tua, he's going to be practicing this week, expected to be playing here on Sunday. Juju Smith-Schuster, hamstring injury, already ruled out for week 8. There's a couple of guys that I'm not even sure if they're worth noting because you weren't starting anybody on their starting roster, but Will Levis, AC sprain. He's they're waiting for him to come back. Aiden O'Connell, he's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. The Raiders did sign Desmond Ridder for whatever that means for Gardner Minshew people. Deebo Samuel hospitalized today with pneumonia. He was a no-show for Sunday, and then now he's hospitalized with pneumonia. So I'm not sure the timeline on the recovery for that, but certainly worth noting and monitoring. We're already going to mention people with the Brandon Aiyuk saga, so we'll go there. Jameson Williams, Lions wide receiver, is suspended for 2 games for PEDs. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, we've already talked about them. They exited this game here early. Does not look good for Chris Godwin, especially.
Every time things start to turn around for Jameson Williams, he does something like he gets.
Was he the gambler too?
Him and Kayshon Boutte, man, they were blowing it up on the DraftKings. Yeah, man, like
8,900 bets.
You got to distance yourself. You got to have 6 degrees of separation from your prop bets. You know, young NFL wide receivers who keep doing it. Anyway, so a couple things. Yeah, obviously Deshaun Watson goes down, and there were already murmurs, lots of hands being wrung far and wide, talking head ESPN shows and whatnot, like, what are the Browns going to do about Deshaun Watson? They have to do something. They're going to lose the locker room, all that stuff, which I partially agree with, but still, it's the way that they talk about it is I find obnoxious. But so fate intervened, you could say. Not that we ever wish injuries on anybody in particular, but certain injuries are less tragic maybe than others. Deshaun Watson's Achilles visibly popped in that game. It was clear right away that his season is over. We get confirmation this morning. I'm of the opinion. Now, so right before this game, the Browns had actually announced that technically, we now consider Dorian Thompson-Robinson the number 2 quarterback on the team. They had adjusted the depth chart before this game. I don't think they knew that Deshaun Watson was going to tear his Achilles. I don't
No.
But then Dorian Thompson-Robinson is forced into the game, maybe like 2 quarters sooner than the Browns necessarily wanted him to be. And then he gets this finger injury that allows. So the emergency quarterback, for those who maybe aren't fully aware of the rules, the emergency quarterback, which is what Jameis Winston, the capacity that he was serving in, you cannot put that quarterback in the game unless both of the quarterbacks that you listed as your 1 and 2 are out of the game with injury. So the fact that Dorian Thompson-Robinson struggled a bit and, clearly was not fully up to speed, fully ready to be in an NFL game again, suddenly has a finger injury which allows Jameis Winston to get on the field. He gets the Browns a late touchdown. I mean, the final score was 21-14. The Browns were clearly trying to win that game and, if not save their season, at least keep it on life support. What I'm saying is I'll be interested to see what Dorian Thompson-Robinson's practice availability is this week. They said, surgery is a possibility. Well, we'll see. But who do you think? So the Browns are 1-6. It's over. They know it's over. They can stop the Deshaun Watson charade. Who do you think, assuming everyone's healthy, is going to be under center for the Browns in Week 8? They're 1-6.
Yeah, so that does throw a little wrinkle into it. I think it's Jameis Winston. Like that's where I would go. That's where all fantasy people want it to be, because obviously he Mr.
Sure.
30 for 30. How many years ago was that? I have this stuff pulled up here. Oh my goodness, that was 2019 when he threw for 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions.
Traded away Amari Cooper. Like, we just can't have any nice things in fantasy.
You can't.
Sure, Amari lands with Josh Allen, but.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's Winston, but DTR could be under center, like if they're maybe looking for the future a little bit. But again, DTR played half the game, threw for like 80 yards and 2 picks, under 50% completion rating. Like that's
sure. Yeah.
Maybe not what they're looking for.
He was clearly not ready, and they get Baltimore. Ooh, that's not great. Dorian Thompson-Robinson actually started against the Ravens once last year. Didn't go so well. So a couple other games. Sunday Night Football, Cowboys at 49ers. I think the Cowboys are going to get killed. I mean, I'll lay it out there right now. I have no faith. The Cowboys have been much better on the road. In fact, they're undefeated on the road, as is Cowboys tradition. But yeah, it's the 49ers. Like the 49ers have their number. The Niners are obviously mortally banged up, so that maybe helps the Cowboys' cause. But yeah, I just don't believe. Monday Night Football, Giants at Steelers. I was talking about this with some of the guys in the fantasy Discord earlier. So the Giants are 2-5. They just got absolutely dominated wire to wire by the Philadelphia Eagles. Saquon Barkley's homecoming game. Obviously, he didn't say it, but he wanted to put it on the Giants with his new team, and he did.
He did.
But that kind of, and the Eagles defense came out and just absolutely, played lights out, way better, totally different team from last week against the Browns, where they looked like they barely wanted to win. But Daniel Jones threw for 99 yards in this game. Granted, they pulled him at the end because there was nothing left to gain by leaving him out there. But what I'm getting at, Daniel Jones, the Giants are now 2-5, all 7 games with Daniel Jones. They get the Steelers next, then the Commanders. Okay, both good, overachieving good teams right now. There's a real scenario where the Giants are 2-7 in a couple weeks, and then they get Carolina going into their bye week after that. Over under 2.5 games left in the Daniel Jones era in New York. That's my question for you on this. Over. Yeah, under?
I mean, over under 2.5. I mean, let me look at the schedule just a little bit further. Pittsburgh, yeah, that's Pittsburgh. Commanders, that's Commanders, and then Carolina. If Carolina pulls out that win, yeah, I mean, you might not see him suit back up after the bye.
24-41-1. That is Daniel Jones's record as the starting quarterback for the Giants, poised to go to 24-42-1 on Monday night. Yeah, you can make every excuse, and I would say that every excuse has been made on Daniel Jones's behalf of Ben McAdoo and Joe Judge. Like, he was never given a fair shot. We're 6 years in, guys, and when is it going to be enough? Mm-hmm. When will we have seen enough? And I mean, yeah, Malik Nabers is a rookie. He's also an all-world talent day one walking off the bus. Could Malik Nabers have been better? day one than he has been. It's not. It beggars belief, I would say.
Yeah.
To even ask, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills on the Daniel Jones front. Like I know he's making $40 million a year. I know the owner John Mara has some bizarro level of attachment to this guy.
Yeah.
We have to be near the end, don't we? Come on.
Well, if you watch anything on Hard Knocks, like the Giants Hard Knocks, it was worth noting that they were talking about Drake May. They were talking about Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, although they didn't really have a shot there. But so when you have an opportunity to be that high up in the draft, like which it sounds like they probably are again. I don't know what their first situation looks like, but yeah, I mean that's tough. That's a tough position to be in. You just paid this guy, like it's going to be a huge cap hit. So. Yeah, I mean, I have his profile up. I'm just seeing nothing but red. Like, there's 1 year we had a 700 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. Like, that's what made him fantasy relevant. He's not necessarily doing that now. So for fantasy purposes, like it's probably over. Like, you can't start a player, even a super flex, who you think might get benched halfway through the game.
It's tough. You don't like it.
you really don't like it. No. So it's a bad position to be in overall.
Yeah. So anyway, I got sucked into an argument about that again earlier because I've been just all over Daniel Jones's case for years now, and some people came to his defense of like, oh, what's the point of putting Drew Lock in there? He's not Daniel Jones. That's it. That's the whole point. It's not gonna happen. We would have some indication. He has won 24 games, guys. Like what are we talking about here? Come on.
Yeah. No, it's bad. And this is the week 2 vent about fantasy because we're halfway through the season. It's flying by.
Yeah.
And the injuries are just piling up still. Like, there's not enough time for all these injuries for people to recoup from them. I was kind of already tilted come the end of Thursday Night Football when I started Courtland Sutton. Marvin Harrison Jr. hadn't been ruled with his concussion just yet. And so I was like, he's probably not going to play. Sure enough, he does play. Gets like 3 points. But I was like, I got a 0 from Courtland Sutton. 0 targets, first time in his career. I'm like, what are we doing here? Please.
And he was out there.
But the biggest thing, I was tilting all the way until Sunday. I've already lost. This is like my best team. I'm 3-3 on the season. Best team roster construction wise. I just keep getting these bad beats. And then I played a guy who had Tyreek Hill, had Jaden Reed, and had Travis Kelce, and they dropped 6 points collectively. I got bailed out. Wow. It helps when you start like Bijan and Joe Mixon and Justin Jefferson, stuff like that. So that's obviously going to help. But I mean, getting a 0 on Thursday feels absolutely horrible. I was tilting for days.
It feels extra bad because you just have to sit there and stare at it. Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. Let me just not look at this for the rest of the week.
Then the receiver or whatever position is the guy that goose egged you on Thursday. Some guy on your bench inevitably scores a touchdown on the first drive, right?
Yeah.
Like right away, it's like, oh, I'm hemorrhaging points. I'm bleeding to death. Oh no, please. Yeah, I had a guy in a league where I'm the commish. A guy traded for I don't even know who it was. I think Deontay Johnson or something. He traded for somebody that wasn't Courtland Sutton, and the trade processed Thursday morning, but he did not remove Courtland Sutton from his lineup. And come Friday morning, he's swearing up and down he would have if he'd had time. If only the trade had been processed sooner, he would have had Courtland Sutton out of that lineup. Friday morning is when he tells me this, when he wakes up and sees the box score. So, I told my buddy, sorry, not much I can do for you here. I can't have the whole league driving over to my house to burn my house down.
He got bailed out. Deontay Johnson, 1 or 2 points. He didn't do anything. So
exactly. You were hosed either way, buddy.
Lining. There's the silver lining always. Shall we get to the running backs here this week for the waiver wire?
Take us to your magical waiver wire, my friend. It's time.
All right. We're going to kick it off with a guy who's probably rostered, but I have to... Well, there's 2 guys. I have to mention them just real quickly. Tank Bigsby, he's rostered in 67% of Yahoo leagues. He plays the Packers in week 8, who are middle of the pack. No pun intended. But it is noteworthy that both of his games have come in, his big blow-up games have come in wins. And the Packers are favored by 4.5 on the road. So basically a touchdown. And ETN has to be out, in my opinion, for you to be able to start him. So that's something to think about there. And then Alexander Madison, If you just take away the name and you were like, okay, I'll take these points. He's the running back 19 on the season. For how many injuries there's been all across the board, like you'll take that. Yeah, it just close your eyes, set it and forget it type of situation. He's playing the Chiefs, which is the worst, absolute worst matchup for running backs. We just saw it here just this last week with Jordan Mason. Like he didn't do anything for the longest time. And then Alexander Madison's going to go out there and I'm sure gets like 10 points.
Statements like Alexander Madison is the RB19 on the season are the kind of thing that make me not want to do this job anymore. If I'll be totally honest. Like this. What am I doing that Alexander Madison, some goof, some Vikings fan that now lives in Las Vegas that got Alexander Madison in the 7th round, and you're Jeff, your sister's ex-wife or ex-husband. You're like, oh, Jeff, bless your heart, you doofus. He's now 5-2 because of this. Not like it's
What makes you more sick? What makes you more sick? Alexander Madison is the running back 19, or Alan Lazard is the wide receiver 12?
Yes. Yeah.
He's gonna cut the mic off. I can't have you quit live show.
I think it's Madison because like Lazard, or Lazard, like we knew the Aaron Rodgers angle. We knew that. Yeah. So like the fact that they drafted Malachi Corley, where is Malachi? Is Malachi Corley okay? Is he even alive? Sure. I don't know where he is. He might have just gone back to college. He might have just maybe the NFL unwound. I don't know what happened. He's gone. So yeah, Lazard has been. I mean, Garrett Wilson's the wide receiver 3 now. I guess I don't know what's happening. They bring in Devontae and back to Tank Bigsby though, because you say you need Etienne to be out to be able to start him. Do you? I mean, at a certain point, like, keep in mind, like, Doug Peterson he's coaching a little bit for his job, potentially. Shahid Khan, the owner of the Jags, is not real big on in-season firings. He waited until December to fire Urban Meyer when it was obvious for months that guy had to go. I mean, he still waited. So Peterson's probably going to make it at least to the end of the year, but he might like to try to hang on to his job longer than that. And if you go back to Etienne, who has been okay, but he ain't been no Bigsby, I don't know, man. I know Etienne is the guy, but when a guy's playing like this, how do you go away from it?
Bigsby is 13th in rushing yards on the season.
Like he can't be top 25 in rush attempts. There's no way. So
yeah, no way.
Listen, get a load of this one. And I did this blind, mind you. I made this move over a week ago. I had to drop somebody to pick up Bigsby in a 10-team league. So 10-team, mind you. I dropped someone to pick up Bigsby. I dropped Christian McCaffrey to pick up Tank Bigsby in that 10-team league. That's how impressed I have been. Look, I know it's bad. You think I don't know? He muted the mic. Colt, language, please. We have presumably children listening in the backgrounds of their dad's minivan. Please. Yeah, I know it's extreme. I know. But double leg Achilles tendonitis? What kind of injury spreads like it's the bubon like it's black lung, like it's rot? So yeah, I mean I know it's crazy, but it's redraft. We got 10 weeks to go. I'm 10 weeks of Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, that hurts, but I'm chasing. So
what did he go for on the Fab waivers after that?
$93.
Yeah, I had to imagine.
Every dollar the guy had. Yep.
Yeah, that would have been a trade away type situation for me. But
I know it's a weird league where nobody trades. I mean, and my bench is absurd. But yeah, no, I didn't like it. Did not like it.
Tank Bigsby has scored more fantasy points than Christian McCaffrey each and every single week so far this season.
Look at that! Look at the consistency. He's dominating the consensus 1.1. You got to take note of that kind of VORP, value over replacement player. Yeah,
there you go.
I know it's extreme, but I also like to live dangerously. Austin Powers,
and that's part of knowing your league. Like if you know you're in a league that does not trade, like. And everybody has that league, right? You're listening out there. Everybody has that league where there's absolutely zero trades. I made a trade over the weekend and somebody said, "Oh, I'm vetoing it just because I don't like the trade. I don't think it's fair. I just don't like it. Like, I don't want your team to get better." I'm like, okay, awesome. That's a great way to make sure I never come back into this league, because it didn't get vetoed. I was lucky. But it's just like, why? Like, I don't get it outside of collusion. I did not trade for this next player, Tyler Goodson. He's rostered 15%.
Now let's get to the chump section.
Yeah, it does go downhill pretty quick, especially for running backs. If you're the Jonathan Taylor manager, I think he's worth rostering. They're playing against the Texans, who are top 5 against the running back, so that's kind of he's looked like the better running back.
Goodson flashed a little bit. I mean, the Miami run defense is a joke, but he kind of got my attention a little bit.
Yeah, and if Taylor, I mean, who's been accustomed to getting injuries, he's kind of the insurance policy. They've seen enough of Trey Sermon, it seems like, and Goodson showed some juice. Justice Hill, I mean, he had a big outing through the air here on Monday Night Football. He had a ton of plays called back. I was watching that whole game, and it was just like play after play. Like, he would just get a reception and run it for 10 yards, holding or whatever it was. And like, sometimes it wasn't even really related to it. So for sure. It's more of a PPX flex type of player at the running back position. And that's really it for running backs. I did want to quickly mention some of the insurance running backs who, we're halfway through the season. These are guys who aren't rostered in over 50% of leagues. We're creeping closer and closer to the fantasy playoffs. Like, we're already in week 8. This is crazy. Like, it's flying by. Seriously. It's not mandatory that you roster these guys, but I think it's definitely worth, if you have somebody, your third or fourth wide receiver, and a lot of your players already passed bye week, like, this is the time to load up on them, because their value will just skyrocket, will explode if an injury were to happen. Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier, Jalen Warren, Ray Davis, Blake Corum, and then Gus Edwards. And Gus Edwards is a guy you might be able to stash on the IR. I mean, J.K. Dobbins has looked great. He hasn't looked fabulous over these last 2 games, but they're still running the ball a ton there in Los Angeles. So just a couple of names to mention at the running back position.
Yeah, Corum seems to have started to put Ronnie Rivers away for the primary backup role. Mm-hmm. If something were to happen to Kyron, would Corum eat the same workload? Probably not, but I think he'd be close to it at this point. Like, I think McVay is pretty much there in terms of comfort level with him. Ray Davis has looked fantastic. Ty Johnson kind of lurking around as not quite a vulture, but a guy who clearly would continue to be involved were something to happen to Cook. Najee's kind of stabilized. Najee Harris more so than I was. Frankly, I thought he was going to have a Jalen Warren problem pretty much the whole way, and he's shaking him loose a little bit. But yeah, Warren is a guy that these are all guys who, like you said, if you've got the room on the bench, you just need to stash an upside guy. These are the upside guys, 100%.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to wide receivers. I'm going to start off who I think is probably at the top of my list. It's one of these 2 guys, Juwan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall, 49ers first round wide receiver here in the 2024 draft. They're both rostered in about a quarter of leagues. As we mentioned, Brandon Aiyuk, he's out for the season with a knee injury. And Deebo Samuel is battling pneumonia. Will that have him out here in week 8? Not 100% sure. So if nothing else, these guys, if you are the Deebo Samuel owner, then you should go ahead and roster one of the 2 of them and just have a backup plan. Because if he's out, it's I think this was the Sunday Night Football game. The Sunday Night Football game. So you got to have some kind of audible option. But they've looked good regardless.
Between Jennings and Pearsall, so 36%, 25%, that means in most leagues they're both available. If you had to prioritize one over the other, say you had number 1 or number 2 waiver priority, you had your pick of the 2, who are you leaning toward?
I'm leaning towards Ricky Pearsall. I mean, it was his very first game. He ran the most routes out of everybody. So Juwan Jennings also wasn't in this game and is currently banged up. So that's worth noting. Yeah, I mean, it's a good matchup regardless. I mean, the 49ers play the Cowboys, as we mentioned. We expect them to put up points, and then they play the Bucs, who their 28th ranked defense. We would normally expect them to put up a lot of points, but with the 2 injuries they just consumed, like that might be in question. Jacob Cowling is a guy you could arguably stash in dynasty leagues if he's out there, if he's not already stashed. Not a name I'm adding, but he ran barely any routes, but had more yards than Pearsall. Pearsall, yeah, I think it's him. I'm not a big Pearsall guy, but the 49ers believe in him, and I believe in their offense and their coaching. So you got to kind of go with history.
I am a big Pearsall guy, so when I saw that the Niners took him, like that shot him up my board in rookie drafts. I got worked for him on by 1 or 2 picks in every single draft, so I was furious. So I'm a little bit angry at Ricky Pearsall for something that he had absolutely no control over, as is my way. But Juwan Jennings, he's a veteran. He's been there. He knows all the route concepts like a veteran would, and yeah. So he's 27. This is an opportunity for him to parlay this into something of a payday in the spring. Probably not with San Francisco. Although actually, didn't they just sign him to a little extension?
I don't remember him. I know the Debo one, which that was kind of the knock on Pearsall. It's like, okay, well, you just. Like Debo, is he on the trade block? Like you just signed Aiyuk.
Right.
Like how is he getting on the field? And then Christian McCaffrey goes down. You got Juwan Jennings goes down. Debo, Aiyuk. Like literally everybody in front of them. If you had a guess on who do you think goes for more fab or priority out of these two, I think people are going to pay up more for Jennings.
I think you're right. Like that recency bias is going to kick in because that game, that 3 touchdown game he had was legendary. Isn't that still the number 1 wide receiver performance of the season in fantasy football? I think it is.
Probably.
So yeah, I would expect that. But yeah, the fact that he just missed this game and we don't have a clear read on what his status is for week 8. Shanahan says he's hopeful, which he's Shanny speak. You can trust that as far as you can throw it. I would expect Jennings just because Pearsall's a general unknown, but that really does come down to what's your league dynamic like? What's the median, IQ level, fantasy IQ? I'm sure they're all smart boys and girls out there, but that's a tough one, man. Do you want points right now, or do you want the most points between now and fantasy championship week? It's kind of something to consider too. Talk to us about this McMillan fella.
A rookie wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We talked about the injuries over and over for the Bucs. 8 targets in this game. There was a lot of garbage time, which we'll talk about another guy later on in the episode. But it's just availability. Like I would certainly expect Chris Godwin to miss this next week. He's out indefinitely. Like that's undisclosed. And then Mike Evans, it is almost certainly a hamstring, which is a multi-week type of injury. Or if you play through it, it's the most re-aggravated injury. So, and he was already playing through it. So, it's just stepping up. And he's also a talented player. He's a rookie, comes out there, demands 8 targets. Like he'll be at the top of the wide receiver core. Sterling Shepard is a guy who he's had a little bit of run. He's a name that I'm just like, he might get veteran preference.
It's like Pearsall versus Jennings, really.
That's a great example of it. Like, I definitely like the 49ers side of things more, but if what was making Baker, was it Evans and Godwin, or they've been produced with other people before, right? So it's a really tough one to be in. McMillan is certainly worth a stash, if nothing else, even if you're not going to play him. Like, take him away from your opponents.
Baker Mayfield and Shepard played some college ball together once upon a time. This is, it's an opportunity for Mayfield to maybe get his buddy some of those greenbacks in March when free agency comes around. I don't know. I'm just saying. I heard things. I'll go with McMillan because hashtag upside. Obviously, he blew up training camp in the preseason. Us dynasty hardcores were all kicking ourselves for letting somebody grab McMillan in the 3rd round instead of that somebody being us. 3rd round rookie drafts in over the summer. So he looks for real. He looks like he is the heir apparent to somebody in Tampa, whether it's Evans, whether it's Godwin, and he's been banged up himself. So the missed mental reps, or the missed sub package opportunities over the last few weeks maybe hurt him a little bit. But the Buccaneers are not the 49ers, where they can just lose all their receivers and say, okay, I guess we're just going to run the ball a ton. They don't have the offensive line for that. They don't have the scheme for that. They need to throw the ball still. Yeah. And poised to potentially benefit is Cade Otton, who we'll get to, I'm sure, in a little bit here, who had a big a padded stat line tonight. Rashad, before we started recording, you said, hey, I think Rashad White is one of the big winners tonight, even his performance tonight aside.
Yeah.
So I like McMillan, but in deep leagues, hey, Shepard, why not? Crazier things have happened for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stick to another rookie, Keon Coleman, Bills wide receiver. He's rostered in about half of leagues. This was his coming out game. 7 targets, 4 receptions for 125 yards. I don't know if you got to catch that game, a million of them going on at one time, but he caught a touchdown. He just bobbled it a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't remember if the defender hit it or if he just bobbled it, but he had a touchdown. So this stat line, it would have been even a bigger game had that got called differently. For what it's worth, all 7, because I saw some things on Twitter, people were talking about it back and forth. I think JJ Zach Reason was mentioning it, but they were like, oh, well, Amari Cooper just opened it up for him and everything like that. But what actually happened is all 7 of those Keon Coleman targets were when Amari Cooper wasn't even on the field. So that's also kind of a red flag as well. It's like, okay, well, what's going to happen when they're both on the field? Because Amari Cooper ate, so did Keon Coleman. Like, that's it. It scares me a little bit. Maybe it's a trade high type situation, and people don't know that, but it's chicken or egg, I guess.
I have an interesting tidbit for you on Keon Coleman. Through week 7, do you know which wide receiver in the NFL among qualifiers had run the highest percentage of their routes for the entire NFL season from the boundary, i.e. not lined up out of the slot, of all receivers in the NFL?
I'm going to guess Keon Coleman.
Very good guess. It was Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman was leading the league in lining up outside, which we all know nowadays. It's a lot harder to make your living out there. It is impossible to make your living out there in any sort of, PPR context. You're just not going to see volume out there unless you're Mike Evans some of the time, because Mike Evans is Mike Evans. So, 21 years old, no real help from any of these other receivers. I mean, Khalil Shakir is a nifty enough player, but that's not a guy that's stressing secondaries or commanding prioritization. Amari Cooper changes this whole landscape. Yes, I hear you say that Coleman's targets were with Cooper not on the field. You can bet your bottom dollar that when the Titans were getting ready for this game, the fact that Amari Cooper was now Buffalo Bill did not get by them. They that was their focus. Keon Coleman was not. So yeah, I think that's huge. I'll be interested to see how many of Coleman's snaps did come from the slot in this game, where he had been forbidden to play any football so far as a Buffalo Bill, because the Bills had Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, who are good players. They cannot be outside. They cannot deal with press, coverage with teams number 1, number 2 outside corners. They can't survive. Keon Coleman was pigeonholed into that role where he was not thriving. Now Amari Cooper can be that guy, and Coleman can actually do what he's supposed to do, which is move around the field and be used in a variety of ways. So yeah, I don't know if I'm running out to throw down my last dollar fab on Coleman here, because it's one game and all, but the Titans defense is pretty good, and I think Coleman is pretty good. I know the Bills like him. If you get beat out on McMillan or the 49er of your choice, Coleman's a fine consolation prize in my book.
Yeah, second half rookie wide receivers, like we see it each and every single year. That's when they start to break out. And we're going into week 8, exactly halfway through. So
it was exactly my argument for him before the season started was, hey, Rashee Rice trajectory. Coleman's not going to be the guy the first 6 weeks. And he wasn't. Yeah. Maybe now. I like that. Yeah, but I agree. Getting him in the slot, like they use him there at FSU, Michigan State, right? Exactly.
They used him in the spots. Like that's where he needs to be. He's athletic. He's gifted. He can make people miss that way, and he showed a little bit of it here this last game. I can look at his snap counts on the slot.
I had a tweet months ago where I just happened to notice like Coleman's agility drill times at the combine were almost identical to Amon-Ra St. Brown's from a few years ago, even though he's a much bigger player. So he doesn't look like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but everything about his combine profile suggests that he should be used more in that fashion. Amari Cooper creates flexibility for the Bills to do that, which they were already showing they wanted to do that. They didn't want to throw it down the field to Diggs on YOLO balls anymore. They were trying to copy the Chiefs' homework. Now with Cooper in town to command secondaries to take their perimeter receivers seriously again, I think Coleman's reinvigorated here for sure.
11% of his routes have been from the slot. 11%. That is so low for Keon Coleman. Like
well,
that is
I think
extremely
that
low.
was I think that got boosted just on the strength of his week 7 numbers, week 7 usage for sure. So
Yeah, I mean, weeks 1 through 6, 5%. So yeah,
it got boosted in a big way. Wow.
keep him in the slot. Keep him in the slot. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we need to prioritize Keon Coleman, guys.
Yeah, live research here for you coming from the Fantasy Index.
He's cousins with CeeDee Lamb, you guys.
All right, let's go to this next guy. Maybe rostered. About 60% of leagues he's rostered in. Since the disagreement. yeah, that's what I like to call it. Romeo Doubs, Packers wide receiver. Since their disagreement with the Packers, 2 weeks ago, he's been the wide receiver 1, and it's been clear for the past 2 weeks. He leads them in every single statistical category for receiving. Would it surprise me if he comes out next week and goes 2 targets, 1 reception, and 10 yards? Absolutely not. The Packers wide receivers do that. When Michael Florer was coming out and he was saying like, "Hey, who's your wide receiver 1?" He's like, "Oh, we have a whole bunch of wide receiver 1s." I believe that to be true in a sense. Like, these guys come out and eat at different times. Like, that's what makes Jordan Love. It's kind of like Caleb Williams. Like, we don't know if it's going to be Moore, if it's going to be a Dunze, if it's going to be Allen, Kmet. Like, we like the offense as a whole, so might as well get the pass catcher. Jordan Love's going to absolutely eat this week. But yeah, I mean, Romeo Doubs is a guy who should definitely, you're not going to be able to pinpoint when it happens, but should be on somebody's roster.
Yeah, I mean, you can do the research and figure out, based on where Doubs has been lining up recently over the last week or two at that given point in time. And, the opposing team's slot corner, their dime guy or whatever, who is it a flattering matchup or not? Even that's a crapshoot, guys, let's be real. So, yeah, the Packers, we're starting to see more teams do this, like take advantage of the fact that they really don't have a number 1 receiver. They just have a lot of good pass catchers. And that's tough for defenses because
absolutely
when you're scheming, when you're getting ready in week for the Packers, who are you taking away?
Yeah. Who's that Amari Cooper?
What's that?
Who's that Amari Cooper? Like you were talking about
exactly.
The Titans.
I mean, you can't. What's the point in taking away anybody because that's just making it easier for the other 3 guys they can kill you with. So yeah. I mean, the Packers are a nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators. They're not gonna give away that advantage by just shoehorning targets to any of these 1 guys, except for maybe Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed will be back, folks. You want all the Packers. I mean, Tucker Kraft, he was on waiver wires everywhere, and now he's like a top 6 tight end in fantasy right now. Scores another touchdown on an incredible throw from Love. My God. So,
you know who else scored a receiving touchdown? Josh Jacobs, finally.
He did it.
First one of his career.
Mission accomplished. What was that career reception, like 209?
Yeah, it was something like
Josh
that.
Josh Jacobs came into the season with 197 career receptions and 0 receiving touchdowns. Unbelievable. He did it, folks. The season's over. The Packers have won the Super Bowl.
There's been one person laying down that parlay where they're like, receiving touchdown for Josh Jacobs, receiving, failing each and every single week. You know what? I'm done betting that.
Oh.
That would be, I'd imagine the multiplier on that one. Let's keep moving on. We talked about the Browns briefly with the quarterback change. Who's it going to be? We're not 100% sure. I'm in the camp of Winston. What was your verdict on that?
I'm going to lean DTR just because, even if they were 2-5, if they'd come back and won that game, it changes the complexion of the rest of their season. But at 1-6, you're in the top 5 picks now currently.
Yeah.
You just have so much road to such a brutal slog back into contention. It won't surprise me at all if it's Winston, but I think it could be DTR.
Yeah. If it's Winston, that's a huge upgrade. As far as passing goes for these guys we're going to be mentioning, Cedric Tillman, I think it's 2nd-year wide receiver for the Browns. He's not rostered at all. Amari Cooper leaves. Cooper stats when he was with the Browns, he played 79% of the snaps out wide. Tillman's first game without Cooper, 75% of the snaps out wide. That's certainly noteworthy. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 81 yards. Jerry Jeudy was out there running a ton of routes as well. Not necessarily any production to follow it, but I mean, both of those guys I think are worth a speculative ad, especially the Tillman one. That one excites me a little bit more because I was pretty high on him. and then he did nothing. So maybe he's got the opportunity here now. And then I think Elijah Moore's still on that team, just somehow still, man, his rookie season fell from, So
Don't do it.
those guys are worth noting just a little bit. Jalen Tolbert, this is Cowboys wide receiver. He might have got dropped during the bye. Even if he wasn't, he's only rostered in 34% of leagues. He is the wide receiver 2 for the Cowboys. He's outproduced CeeDee Lamb on some certain weeks in some categories. So is he better than Lamb? Absolutely not. But here's some games that should be shootouts that are coming up. You got the 49ers, Falcons, Eagles, Texans, Commanders, Bengals, Bucks, Eagles again. Like absolute. I would imagine all of those are 45 to 50 plus over-unders. Like, they're going to be some really good ones. I love getting players that are after the bye, too, because you get that extra week out of them. It's just like, that's kind of like a side note here. Like, go ahead and just get teams. They're going to like change once they come from the bye, whether it's good or bad for certain players. And the Cowboys are no exception to this. Like, we saw CeeDee Lamb before the bye. Here's the stats. Like, before the bye, last year, he had one game above 7 targets through the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, he started slowish.
Absolutely. And then they have their bye, and then he comes back, and he didn't have a game with less than 9 targets and ended as the wide receiver 1 overall. So, yeah, I mean, if you could pay up and get CD, that's also kind of a sidebar there. Like, go trade for CeeDee Lamb. He hasn't produced. Probably like the wide receiver, probably 20, if I guess.
18, 20, yeah.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah, you could probably definitely trade for him right now. But yeah, Tolbert is a guy that I think could warrant. He's the wide receiver 2 for a team that should be passing a lot. They can't really run the ball.
Just as likely, of course, is Dak and Lamb have been seen practically every week miscommunicating, ball hitting the turf, Lamb turning and looking back toward Dak like, bro, what? Like, and I'm sure those are not all on Dak, but clearly, like, those guys need to get their connection dialed in if the Cowboys are going to get back into some sort of serious contention. I'm not sure they will, but they presumably they will try. Lamb could have a boatload of targets coming his way out of the bye too. With the Niners on deck, who are a lot easier to throw against than they are to run on, I would bet that Lamb is going to see something close to double-digit targets coming out of the bye. But yeah, Tolbert, I mean, he's shown them everything they need to see. Like, they need a legitimate presence across from Lamb. Brandon Cooks is on IR. He's not in frame right now, and we don't know that we're going to get anything else from him really for the rest of the season. I mean, he'll be back at some point, but what's he got left? He's in year 11, and Tolbert's the only other guy they have. They were kind of high on him out of the draft. He's kind of earned his stripes. So yeah, I think Tolbert should be a guy who sees 5 to 7, 8 targets a week pretty reliably going forward. Dak's going to be top 5, top 6 in the league in pass volume the rest of the way, in all likelihood. So
good points. Demario Douglas, Patriots wide receiver, he missed 3/4 of the game here with an illness. It's not an injury, so I wouldn't be dropping him, and I'd be rostering him if he's out there. And then 2 guys they're very deep league guys, but Troy Franklin, rookie wide receiver for the Broncos, he's getting more and more work. Sean Payton came out, head coach of the Broncos, saying, hey, we got young guys. I really want to get them out there. And we saw 0 targets to Cortland Sutton. We saw Marvin Mims on the field. We saw Troy Franklin come out there. Like, they're getting other people worked in. So it's a very deep league stash, not in like a typical 12 team. Am I grabbing him? Maybe 14 or greater. And then Tim Patrick, as you may have heard his name over the years, he's now in the Lions. He got cut from the aforementioned Broncos. Jameson Williams, as we mentioned, he is out for 2 games for violating the PED policy. And so Tim Patrick would presumably be the next man up. Again, a much deeper stash, and there's absolutely no guarantee that they just don't give more to Gibbs or Laporta. Laporta has, that's where a lot of his volume is gone. So, you seem like a disgruntled Laporta manager, just a little bit.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, I have him in most of my leagues, for sure. And yeah, through 6 games, Laporta has 17 targets, less than 3 targets a game. That's incredible. I don't know what Sam Laporta did to deserve this. They massacred my boy. Look what they did to my boy. But,
Look what they did to my boy.
I mean, you probably use like a 3rd round pick, 4th round hopefully, but probably like a 3rd round pick to get Laporta in a lot of leagues. You're probably already thinking about dropping him. The next 2 games will at least tell you if it's time. Because if Laporta does not see at least a dozen targets over the next 2 games, it's over. I mean, 2025, live to fight another day. He'll still be a young man. But for 2024, it's over because there's no excuse. Tim Patrick, sure, yeah, deep leagues, whatever. Sam Laporta should be the guy that actually benefits from this suspension. And if he doesn't, then we know the Lions just are not that into him right now, and that's fine. Move on.
Yeah, I think it's Laporta for sure. Yeah, I like that point. Speaking of Laporta, let's talk about some tight ends. We'll move on to them. We talked about him just a little bit, but Cade Otton, I mean, he came out, had a monster game. Half of it was in garbage time. They were down almost 20 points with just a little bit of time remaining. But some of the catches Cade Otton was making this game were spectacular, like high pointing the ball, catching it on his shoulder, like breaking through tackles. Like he looked good in this game, and the Bucs are going to need him to step up. We talked about Jalen McMillan as a wide receiver option, but at the tight end, like I wouldn't. There's nobody else I would rather have. Like he could arguably be at the top of my priority list outside of like a Tank Bigsby, or maybe Ricky Pearsall. Like the tight end landscape, like it's horrible. You just talk about Sam Laporta, who was probably the first tight end drafted in all these drafts. Cade Otton is a guy who I would definitely have no problem rostering.
Would you drop Sam Laporta for Cade Otton straight up in redraft league right now?
Oh,
it's a question.
My goodness. It is a question. Let me see Sam Laporta's upcoming schedule just real quick.
It doesn't matter. What matters is, do you believe or do you not believe at this point? We're beyond schedules. It's past. This is a. There's, what do you call it? Analytics fantasy players versus vibe fantasy players. This is a vibe
versus
call,
winners,
my friend.
Oh man, I don't think I have the fortitude to do that.
It's a spicy one.
If it's a PPR league, a full PPR league, I will go Cade Otton. Because I would expect him to get a plethora of targets and volume here going forward.
You would not have dropped Christian McCaffrey for Tank Bigsby. I can tell. You don't.
No, God, no.
You don't have the stomach for it.
I don't have the stomach. I almost threw up live on camera when you said you did that.
He's never going to come back. His legs. We haven't seen Christian McCaffrey with his legs attached since August. We don't know.
That's true.
We don't know. He might be in a wheelchair at this point.
Lieutenant Dan.
He went to Germany. Did he ever come back? Has anyone seen Christian McCaffrey? Exactly.
I don't know.
All
That's
right.
a good question to be answered.
Week 39, 39th week in a row. Talk to us about your boy, Hunter Henry.
I know.
How much Hunter Henry stock do you own, Colt?
I actually got his jersey right over here.
Wife walks in wearing a Hunter Henry jersey.
Had Cade Otton not kind of gone off here on Monday Night Football, Hunter Henry would be at the top, as he is each and every single week. As long as he's under 50%, I'm going to keep mentioning him because people are going to be coming into the podcast new, and they're going to need to know. I mean, he's 5th in yards, 8th in targets over these past 2 weeks with Drake May, and that's across the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, he needs to be rostered somewhere. The tight end landscape is awful. I'm not dropping Sam Laporta for Hunter Henry, but Cade Otton I will.
Next guy should have been ahead of Henry by a lot.
You think so?
I do.
Oh, well, I guess it kind of works in as well. DK Metcalf is week to week with his MCL sprain. So Noah Fant, I mean, it's not correlation exactly because it's back-to-back weeks. Yeah, back-to-back weeks for Noah Fant with 60-plus yards. DK Metcalf's banged up. So, yeah, I could see an opportunity for him to be worked into the game plan for sure.
Oh, boy. We're getting real deep now. Who is this?
I don't want to say this next. I'm moving his name down because I can't possibly say it next.
Kylan Branson? What are we? Oh, God.
No. Dalton Schultz, he's surprisingly rostered in a nice 69% of leagues. He may be dropped. He's been not so great. They play the Colts. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends. And CJ Stroud, he produces when it's against bad defenses. He's averaged almost 300 yards passing per game against the Colts in his career, just, the 3 games they've played. Dalton Schultz is a guy who I've had to, unfortunately, with the tight end landscape, roster and play often. He hasn't had a game with more than 4 receptions or a game with more than 34 yards. It's been abysmal. If there were a game for him to have, it would be here against the Colts, assuming the Colts can keep up. But yeah, Dalton Schultz, the mighty have fallen. I was really hoping with Nico Collins' injury, he would have something to do, but I digress. Jonnu Smith, I'm still not mentioning this other guy just yet because I can't stomach it. Jonnu Smith, this one's even bad enough, but 7 targets, 7 receptions for 96 and a touchdown. I'm not personally chasing it. Tua's coming back. Is it a coaching decision on, hey, we want to get Jonnu Smith worked more into the offense. We paid this guy. We brought him in. Or was it more of the Tyler Huntley effect where, hey, it's more dinks and dunks and getting it over to Jonnu because I have a rapport with him. I think it is worth mentioning that Tua just last year, led the NFL in passing yards, but they were in top 10 in passing rate this year before Tua's injury. And last year, I think they ended the season as they were top 10 last season in pass rate, as you can imagine when you lead the league in passing yards. So, Jonnu Smith could definitely be part of their game plan.
Jonnu, yeah, I mean, it's you can't really
Are you
start
chasing
him, but he did have 7 targets for 6 catches into his last game before going down, and he's got 15 targets over the last 2 weeks. So, yeah, I mean, certainly we're all hoping that Tua comes back and the Dolphins just go right back to partying like it's 2023. He's chucking it all over the yard. That's what Tyreek Hill drafters need. That's what Waddle drafters need. All of it. But even against the Bills, like in that game, the Dolphins could not get the ball down the field. Tyreek Hill, other than that one play against the Jaguars in the season opener, it was real touch and go against the Jaguars in the season opener when defenses are supposed to be soft. So I'm not real confident that the Dolphins are just going to hit the ground running with Tua coming back here. The Cardinals just kept the Chargers out of the end zone for 4 quarters, so they're not a super tough matchup, but they're not a pushover either. Yeah. Anyway, just riffing on the Dolphins writ large right now. Jonnu's kind of like a Dalton Schultz, like let him hang around on your bench, and if you have to start him, pinch your nose and do it. Speaking of, talk about this last one.
Okay, yeah. Will Disley is now a Charger. He had 11 targets. He went 8 for 81.
Is that a real guy?
He went 8 for 81. Sadly, it is. If you look at him and Hayden Hurst's photo, they look like identical people.
I have long had a conspiracy theory, one of my many, is that Christian McCaffrey and Taysom Hill are actually the same guy.
Oh.
And I even would go so far as to say, if you look back at the Saints and Panthers historical matchups, they never played in the same game. That's not true, but I would convince people that it was, and I think I got some people on board.
You had me convinced.
Exactly. I kind of believe it. I know it's wrong. So, yeah, he may just be Hayden Hurst. It may just be one guy who's collecting 2 paychecks from the Chargers with a fake beard.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Wouldn't surprise me. Let's wrap it up. Quarterback streams of the week. Bo Nix, he's rostered only 23% of leagues. Carolina, they're 28th ranked against quarterbacks.
All you got to say.
They just let Marcus Mariota go out and on very short notice throw up 20 points. And they're susceptible to running quarterbacks. We saw Jaden Daniels. I mean, he went out on the play, but him and Mariota were able to run on them.
Yep.
Tua, he's rostered less than 50% of leagues. He's coming back. You're of the opinion that he is not going to come back out there and light it up immediately. I'm
nervous.
I'm nervous as well. But I would play Bo Nix actually over Tua, and I would play Tua over this next guy, Jameis Winston, assuming he's the starter. They played the Ravens. They've given up the second most points to quarterbacks. Is it going to turn the ball over? Yeah, and hopefully he starts the game like that, because then he's just going to have to chuck it some more. But yeah, Jameis Winston is a deeper league, certainly a super flex, type of leagues like that.
How about I'm not sure offhand. Maybe you can check it for me while I ramble for a moment. Kirk Cousins against a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense that all of a sudden can't stop anybody. I want anybody I can get against the Buccaneers defense right now, because I mean, they're a talented unit, but it hasn't mattered. I mean, they're giving up points to everybody. Even the Spencer Rattler Saints got 27 on them just a couple weeks ago. They wound up blowing them out. But yeah, what's Cousins' availability looking like right now?
So Kirk Cousins, he kind of scares me just a little bit because he had that huge game, obviously the 509 game. He's rostered in 64% of leagues, so you may have him as a streamer possibility. But yeah, I mean, he's only thrown for over 1 touchdown in 2 games, 2 of the 7. Sorry. One was against Philly. I mean, that's a struggling pass defense, as much as Tampa's is. And then no games over 250 yards. Like, it's been a little questionable. I know maybe it's just the last 2 games are still kind of sticking around because it's 7 points, 12 points. No 20-point games outside of that huge, monstrous 500-yard game. So that makes me scared a little bit. I'd start Bo Nix over him, personally. I mean, he's been running like crazy. Oh, and
anybody against Carolina. The Panthers just, I mean, they put Dalton in, and that seemed to kind of perk up the troops temporarily. Like, oh, okay, we're actually trying again. But it's going downhill in a hurry again. I mean, 40-0 to the Commanders. I mean, yeah, the Commanders are outstripping expectations a bit right now. Or it wasn't 40-0, but it was horrible. The Panthers are laying right back down in the gutter, it sure seems like. I mean, Denver, Carolina. Denver minus 13.5. I'll take the Broncos to cover that right now. I mean, it's going to be that bad for sure.
I am curious of what it is. But for what it's worth, 136 rushing yards from Bo Nix so far on the season. Like, that's...
I'm surprised it's not more than that.
That's a ton. Right
Nix
now,
is
the Broncos...
this week.
The Broncos are favored by 7.5 points.
Oh my God, they'll cover by a lot. They will cover.
And then no other quarterbacks, but I did want to mention this one just because bye weeks happen. People drop their kickers. We're not in kicker leagues. At least I'm not. But
yes,
Brandon Aubrey is the new age Justin Tucker. Like, he is Mr. Automatic. He's out there. He's the kicker number 4 on the season, and he had a bye week. So just got 0 points, and he's still the number 4. I think it was worth mentioning just because he probably dropped in some leagues. Me personally, I rostered 2. I know it's very off-putting. We never talk about kickers, but I did want people to go pick him back up.
Nobody dropped Aubrey in any leagues, Colt. Come on, you got to get serious.
Maybe they did. Maybe they dropped that guy. You see the picture I have in the doc? Do you know who that guy is?
I've seen the face. For those,
yeah.
Colt just included this picture in the show docket without any content. No note or nothing. Didn't say anything about it. Just put that in there and waited for me to find it, like a total.
How
weirdo.
old do you think that person is?
Mitch Trubisky?
No, it's not Trubisky. How old do you think that person is?
How old are they?
Yeah.
34, 33, 32.
28.
Okay.
I thought you were going to guess a lot higher.
Why are we talking about this guy?
It's Matthew Wright, the kicker for the 49ers.
Right, the guy who got killed at the end of the 49ers Seahawks game. Is he alive?
He's not on IR. He's on RIP.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, pour one out for him.
So he's out for IR at minimum 4 weeks, RIP minimum. You can't come back before October 31st.
Yeah, that's when he comes back.
Halloween joke. Back. All right, Colt, let's wrap up here. What do you got for us for defensive streams this week?
For my defensive stream of the week, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. They're playing the Colts. They're playing in Texas. They get to go against Anthony Richardson, who is a guy who, in his 4 starts so far this season, he has turned over the ball 7 times. Seems that he likes to do that. The Texans' defense overall is actually a good defense in general. But yeah, I mean, he's throwing for 200 yards, 167, 129. Like, it's decreased each and every single start so far in the season. He's not passed for over 50% of his completion rating. So yeah, I think he's certainly somebody who's going to turn over the ball. Hopefully one of them's for a pick 6.
Yeah, that's a sensible play. I like it a lot. For me, there's no salvation in sight for the team I'm hunting on this one. I'm going with they're not available in a ton of leagues, but if the Chargers are out there in your league, possibly after tonight's game, maybe they'll hit the wire because they kind of underperformed projections. At home against the Saints, yeah, you attack that. The Saints are... Is there a team that has gone more directly down bad than the Saints in the last 14 days because, oh man, Shaheed done for the season. Olave may not even dress. Obviously no Derek Carr until week 9 at the earliest. It's Kamara's all banged up and they barely let him play against the Broncos, and now they get an almost as brutal draw in the Chargers, who are no nonsense. They're gonna play tough-nosed defense and try to win by 3 points. Yeah, I want the Chargers. They have not allowed more than 20 points to anybody, and that was to the Steelers. So yeah, they're for real.
Yeah, I love that. Spencer Rattler, I mean, he's expected. I would expect him to play. I don't think Carr's going to be back in there just yet. And even if it is, again, missing some of your top weapons, Shaheed, when you got Bub Means and Cedric Tillman or Cedric Wilson out there and everything like that, it's
lean.
Not water I want to be treading in. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, it has been fun rapping with my buddy Colt, as it always is. We will be back with you same time, same place next week to go through what all went down in week 8 and get you ready for week 9. Should be a lot of fun.
See you then.
This has been the Fantasy Index Podcast. For more great content, premium rankings, and cheat sheets, head over to fantasyindex.com.